Have you ever noticed how quickly a good day can disappear? You get a raise at work. You're proud of yourself. You call your family. Maybe you even think things are finally moving in the right direction. Then, a coworker casually mentions they were promoted. Nothing about your life has changed. Your paycheck is exactly the same. Your progress is exactly the same. But somehow, your happiness vanishes. Or maybe you're relaxing on a Sunday afternoon. The weather is nice. You've got a cup of coffee in your hand. Life feels peaceful. Then you open social media. One friend is traveling through Europe. Another just bought a house. Someone else announces they're engaged. 5 minutes ago, your weekend felt perfect. Now it feels like you're wasting your life. It's easy to think the problem is comparison. People say things like, just stop comparing yourself to others, as if comparison were simply a bad habit you could quit. But what if that's completely wrong? What if comparing yourself isn't the problem at all? What if your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do? Because here's something surprising. You were comparing yourself to other people long before Instagram existed, long before smartphones, long before the internet. In fact, humans have probably been doing it for hundreds of thousands of years, which raises an interesting question. If comparison makes us miserable, why would evolution build it into our minds? The answer starts with a simple problem. Imagine you wanted to know whether you were tall. How would you figure that out? Tall compared to what? Or imagine you wanted to know whether you were successful. How successful? There isn't a universal scale. There isn't a scoreboard hidden somewhere that tells you whether you're doing well enough. Many of the things we care about, success, attractiveness, intelligence, popularity, don't have objective measurements. So the brain solves this problem the easiest way it can. It looks around. Other people become the measuring stick. Psychologists call this social comparison. But the idea is much simpler than the name suggests. When the brain can't evaluate something directly, it evaluates it relatively. Not by asking, am I successful? But by asking, am I more successful than the people around me? Not, am I attractive? But, how attractive am I compared to others? Comparison isn't a glitch. It's the brain trying to answer questions that don't have absolute answers. In other words, your mind isn't broken, it's calculating. And for most of human history, that calculation was actually useful. Our ancestors lived in small groups, a few dozen people, maybe 100 at most. Knowing where you stood inside that group mattered. Were you respected, trusted, contributing, falling behind? Social status wasn't about ego. It often determined who shared food with you, who cooperated with you, who protected you, who chose you as a partner. Paying attention to other people wasn't vanity, it was survival. So evolution rewarded brains that constantly monitored their social environment. The problem is, your brain still thinks it's living in that small tribe. But your tribe doesn't contain 50 people anymore. It contains billions. Every morning, before you've even finished breakfast, your brain can compare your life with Olympic athletes, Hollywood actors, tech billionaires, professional artists, fitness influencers, travel bloggers, and classmates you haven't spoken to in 15 years. An ancient survival system suddenly has access to the entire world, and it has absolutely no idea how to handle that. But there's another twist. The people you compare yourself to aren't even real. Not completely. Think about how you present your own life online. Do you post every failure, every argument, every rejection, every moment you felt insecure? Probably not. You post birthdays, vacations, achievements, funny moments, things you're proud of. Everyone else does exactly the same. So your brain is trying to build an accurate picture of reality, using everyone's highlight reel. Psychologists describe this as a form of selective exposure combined with availability bias. The mind naturally assumes that the information it sees most often represents normal reality. If you're constantly exposed to exceptional success, exceptional beauty, and exceptional lifestyles, your brain quietly begins to believe that's what ordinary life looks like, which means your completely normal life starts feeling strangely inadequate. Not because it changed, because your reference point changed. And that's something we rarely notice. We think our feelings come from reality. Often, they come from comparison. Imagine finishing a workout. You're exhausted. You're proud of yourself. You've lifted more weight than last month. You've genuinely improved. Then someone walks into the gym and effortlessly lifts twice as much. Suddenly, your achievement feels smaller. But why? Your muscles didn't become weaker. Your progress didn't disappear. The only thing that changed was the person standing next to you. That reveals something important. Your satisfaction wasn't based entirely on your own progress. It was partially based on where you believed you ranked. The human mind is surprisingly relative. Economists, psychologists, and behavioral scientists have found this pattern almost everywhere. People don't simply care about how much money they earn. They care how much they earn relative to people around them. They don't just care about success. They care where they stand. Even happiness can become relative, which explains another strange phenomenon. Have you ever reached a goal you desperately wanted, only to find yourself chasing the next one almost immediately? You finally buy the car, get the promotion, reach the fitness goal, hit the subscriber milestone. For a brief moment, it feels incredible. Then your mind quietly moves the finish line. Now someone else is further ahead. Now there's another level to reach. This is one reason satisfaction fades so quickly. The brain keeps updating its reference point. Yesterday's dream becomes today's baseline, and today's baseline becomes tomorrow's disappointment. But even that isn't the deepest problem, because comparison itself isn't what hurts us most. The real damage happens one step later. Imagine two thoughts. The first is, they're better at public speaking than I am. That's information. Now compare it with this thought. They're better than me. That isn't information. That's identity. And that tiny change makes all the difference. Somewhere along the way, the brain stops comparing performances and starts comparing people. It quietly replaces one question with another. Instead of asking, who gave the better presentation, it asks, who has more value? Instead of, they achieved something I haven't achieved yet, it becomes, they matter more than I do. That's where comparison stops being useful and starts becoming painful. One question remains. If comparison isn't the enemy, what is it actually for? The answer is surprisingly simple. Comparison was never designed to tell you who you are. It was designed to help you learn, to help you adapt, to help you improve. Somewhere along the way, we quietly gave it a job it was never meant to do. We asked it to measure our worth. Think about a map. A map can tell you where you are. It can even show you where someone else is. But imagine asking a map whether you're a good person or whether your life has value. It can't answer that question. Not because the map is broken, because it was never built for it. Comparison works the same way. It can tell you that someone has more experience, more knowledge, a different skill, a faster path. That's useful information. But it cannot tell you how valuable you are. The moment you ask comparison to answer that question, it gives an answer it was never designed to give. That's why two people can look at the exact same successful person. One feels inspired, the other feels defeated. The comparison is identical, only the meaning changes. One mind asks, what can I learn? The other asks, what does this say about me? One turns comparison into a teacher, the other turns it into a judge. Maybe that's the biggest misunderstanding of all. We spend our lives trying to stop comparing ourselves. But comparison isn't something you eliminate. It's something you understand. Because your brain will always notice where you stand. That's part of being human. The real freedom comes from deciding what that information means. So the next time someone else's success catches your attention, notice the first question your mind asks. If it's, am I enough? You've handed comparison a job it was never meant to do. But if the question becomes, what can this teach me? Comparison becomes what it always evolved to be. Not a measure of your worth, but a guide for your growth.